Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Gathering, hosted by SRS Paranormal. Before we get into the show tonight, which is going to be the recap of our recent visit to the Anderson Hotel, I just want to take a minute to remind everybody that Paranormal Warehouse is a service where we actually stream this show. But to follow what our team does, you need to follow us at SRS Paranormal Fans if you want to keep up with when we go live on investigations and the other content that we put out. Here on Paranormal Warehouse, we do this show weekly. But tonight is a very special night because for the first time ever joining us on The Gathering is the one and only lead investigator, Kevin King. So we are super excited to have Kevin with us tonight on the air finally. It's been a long time coming. Kevin stays super busy, but he was gracious enough to jump on with us tonight. And of course, as always, you have Michelle and Al in the upper corner, and I'm Matt, and I'm here each week too. So anyways, guys, let's talk about the Anderson. Who wants to start?
All right.
Al, you want to talk a little bit about its background, its history, what you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm still researching the history part, but I want us to say this was a location that we have been trying to get in for a couple of years. It was like a bucket list item for us. I had messaged the owners 2 or 3 times, and each time they said no. I guess they got tired of me asking, so they finally said, "Yeah, you guys can come do it." So, if you're not familiar, the Anderson Hotel is in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. It was a hotel from I want to say the mid 1930s up until 1960s, and then it was a boarding house for a while, and then it closed down permanently. But it's been featured on Paranormal Lockdown. Nick Groff and Katrina done it, and a few other places, a few other groups have come in there and done it. And then they like 2 years ago, they shut the place down because the activity was so violent. So they shut it down.
And that's what I was going to say. So there was several reports, and I know there is some contested parts of this, so we're not going to get into that because we don't know all the facts. But there are some claims of people having being bitten at the location or scratched at the location. Now, I will say in the 7 hours that we spent there, we did not experience any negative activity or anything that we thought was on a scale or even potentially felt negative to us. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen and maybe didn't happen to people when they were there. But Al, I did find out a little bit more on the history. It was also a hotel before it was the Anderson. It was known as the Lloyd Hotel. I actually found this out earlier today in the late 1800s. So there's rumored to have been approximately 13 deaths on the property. We do know for a fact that there was 4 confirmed. There was the Burning Man who died during the fire that happened in the 70s. That was standing in the window actually refused to come to the ladder when the fire department got on scene. There was 2 hangings. There was one in the back stairwell. There was the one where the gentleman took his life and hung himself in the or in his closet rather. And then there was the 2 ladies that committed suicide, and one of them, she slit her wrists. She was 19 years old. And then there was the woman that took her life in the bathtub. So that's what we do know as far as some of the history and some of the stuff. But first impressions, I'll start with you, Michelle. First impressions, what did you think when you got there? What did you feel? What was kind of your first thoughts?
Well, the new part, when you walked in and you go to the left, there's the newer section, and then to the right is the older section. And I didn't really feel anything in the new part. I felt more probably activity in the older part. I didn't feel anything, bad or anything there. But yeah, I thought there was probably more activity in the older part.
So how about the blistering heat, though? It was only 97 degrees the whole night?
Yeah.
91 at the lowest.
I think it cooled down to 91 toward the end of the night. So
yeah, that was the roughest part. No air circulation, and you got to really love this stuff if you're willing to. I don't want to do anything in 90+ degree weather. I mean, I don't want to mow my yard. I don't want to do nothing when it's that hot. So to be able to go out there and stay up there, we had to really be enjoying what we were doing, I guess. Kevin, what did you think of it? What was your first initial feelings?
Yeah, it was good to go up with the owners too. That I think that was a nice experience that sometimes we don't have when we start to film. But I think just having some of the explanation of maybe more factual information, getting that. Of course, when we go up the stairs, first thing that hits you is it is set up as a haunted house. So even though it's not being used right now that way, it's they just leave the props there. So there are a few props in there that adds to the creepiness factor. I think probably, the left side of the building, if you're going up the steps, and facing the hotel, didn't seem as, I guess creepy to me as the right side. I think that's probably the way a lot of people felt. So, and not that we didn't get some activity on the left side. I think it maybe just, the level of interaction we got was more on the right. So
yeah. And I think that's kind of from what, reading some of the other teams that have been there. There's a couple of reports you can find online, a couple of even small YouTube videos where other teams had gone in there before it got shut down. It seemed like the majority of the activity that other teams reported was on that right side, the side that you guys all felt that way about. For me, walking through, and then I'll get to you in a second, Al, but I'll just tell mine real quick. But for me, it was the same thing. I was really gravitated. I was drawn towards that right side. I didn't really feel much, and you guys know a lot of times on investigations, I'll start to feel when areas are going to be more active, or there is activity happening. That only happened in one place for me, and that was really back there in the room where the guy hung himself. That as we approached that room, that was the room that felt heaviest to me. That energy was palpable. The rest of the place, I didn't really feel a whole lot of movement or energy or anything. It was kind of flat in a lot of areas. But that seems to be why people refer to that as the dark hallway, is because that's where the majority of the activity seems to take place. I'm not sure why that is. But Al, what was your impressions?
Well, as soon as you got to the top of the steps, the first thing that hit you was heat.
Absolutely.
And it was about 97 degrees up there when we started, so it was hot. But yeah, I felt like there was a definite oppression on the right side of the building versus the left. Now we did get some activity in what they considered the lobby, even on our SJ cameras. But we'd taken a REM pod in there, our dog, and set it up, and it didn't go off for a few minutes, but then I started asking questions, and it seemed like something started interacting with the dog. So,
and for the people that don't know what the dog is the Power Pup, and it is a device that we have built. It's basically a REM pod, but it's a shielded variety, so it's not as sensitive to things that normally trip REM pods. But it's one we built ourselves inside of a stuffed dog, and we found that interactions with children and even adult spirits seem to gravitate towards the dog. The dog seems to be something that gets more response than the standard REM pod does for us. So that's for people that didn't know what the Power Pup was. Another piece of equipment we got to use on this location, and I'll talk a little bit about it before we'll show a clip here in a minute. We're still going through the evidence, and we're still putting everything together. We will have an episode up on our YouTube. You can see our YouTube as SRS Paranormal. It's our channel on the YouTube side. We will have the full episode up there once we finish going through all the evidence and finish finalizing the history. Part of that process is getting the historical facts. We like to separate the facts from the folklore. That's really important to us. So we're waiting on some historical information to come in. But that new piece of equipment I'm talking about is the GS2 laser. This is the first location we really got to take that out and deploy it. And it's a fantastic piece of equipment. I can't say that it doesn't have any false positives yet because we haven't used it long enough. But in the time that we ran it, I didn't see any indications of that. We ran it the whole night, and it actually yielded, I think, a substantial piece of evidence for us. That was not only validated by the GS2 laser, it was validated with the Paranormal Music Box. It was validated by Kevin and myself because we felt the experience. We audibly heard the footsteps as they approached. And then the instrument started interacting with that, and we had intelligent interactions. So all that will be in the episode once we get it up on YouTube. But I think I know in my 15 years, that was probably one of, I think, the greatest captures that I think we've had. What's your thoughts, guys, on that?
Yeah, it was great. That hallway, like you said, it was the dark hallway. It's definitely a different feeling all the way down through there. I think my first, kind of more of a dark feeling was actually where the Burning Man supposedly lived, in that first room. Like, it almost walking down that hallway, it stops you. Going down through there, and it's one of the earlier rooms as you're walking down the hallway. But all down through there, I think it was very active. I mean, I'm sure your clip's going to show the music box and everything else that was going off at the time. Those things just don't go off for any reason. It's definitely we've had those set up so many places that don't make a peep or don't have any interaction. So when they do, it's something special.
And I think something that was really compelling with that too, we actually went live on Facebook when we did our meter sweep, when we were getting our baselines, and Kevin actually did a live spirit box session. And we had some great interactions during that spirit box session. And that's another thing that we're very selective on. I mean, we're very careful how we do those things. And we have some places where the way our boxes are configured with the Faraday bags and no antennas, where we don't get anything that comes over those boxes at all. And we had some very relevant answers coming over there. So again, if you want to go over to our Facebook page at SRS Paranormal Fans, it's scrolling along the bottom. You can actually go back and watch that entire live at the Anderson Hotel. It's still up there. We actually went live a couple other times, but that one actually goes over, the meter readings and what we were getting in each room on our baselines, as well as that whole spirit box session was live on Facebook at the time. But we were getting compelling stuff as we were going through that related to both the Burning Man and possibly what happened with the gentleman that hung himself. At least that's what the direct questions, the answers that we were getting were to.
Right.
So I'll set up this clip, and I guess we'll go ahead and show this clip since we're talking about it. Then we'll see what else you guys want to get into about the specifics of the location. But what this clip is right after we finished doing that live, where we had done the spirit box session, we're getting the baselines, we were still setting up some stuff. So Kevin and I decided to go over to the dark hallway and put the GS2 laser up and shoot it down that hallway, since we all felt, the team felt that was going to be the area where we'd probably have the best activity or best option of catching something. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. I'm tongue-tied. But we felt that was going to be our best bet, would be to deploy it there. We decided to put the paranormal music box out in front of it, so it was within the grid, but pointing into one of the rooms that goes to the apartment where the gentleman hung himself. And the thought process there is people get touched in that room all the time, and there's a lot of supposedly shadow figures seen in that room. So by putting the paranormal music box pointing into that room, anything coming out of the room or going down the hall would trip the paranormal music box, but if it moved up and down the hall, would activate the GS2. We placed a camera, a full spectrum camera, filming the laser grid, and I had my body cam on. So big shout out to Darryl Marston from A&E's Ghost Hunters for the tip that a lot of us in the paranormal community have picked up of wearing the body cams. And he really talked a lot about that when we had him on our show back in May. And I'm glad that we did get one of those, because I didn't have a regular camera with me, which happens a lot when you're doing setup. We always have a digital recorder rolling. Kevin had a digital recorder rolling, but we didn't have a camcorder. So I just reached down and turned on my body cam while we were setting up, just in case for EVPs or for anything. Never dreamed that we'd start immediately getting that activity, and we did. So I just reached down real quick and started recording on the full spectrum. And I'm going to show you guys 30 seconds of it. The full clip is also up on our Facebook if you want to go see the whole 4 or 5 minute interaction. But this is 30 seconds of it, because due to StreamYard, we are limited to 30-second clips. So this is happening on that hallway that we're talking about, just outside of the hangman's room. Light up a little bit more. Do you hear footsteps? Holy shit, I just heard footsteps. Oh my God! It's right behind you. Yeah, and so the second part of that clip is, and again, the whole full clip is over on our Facebook, but the second part of that clip where it shows the screen on a full spectrum, that's actually right after the first part where Kevin and I audibly hear those footsteps approaching. We then decide to ask the entity that was interacting with us, which we believe was a female spirit, to trigger the music box again, which it does on command. As soon as we say, if you're a female, can you approach the music box? She does, it goes off, and then it goes quiet. So we say, okay, we're going to leave. If you would come back out here and play our music box again and try to tell us your name, say it as loud as you can. Unfortunately, we did not capture any EVP evidence with it, but Kevin and I leave. We go down the hall. We round the corner. Still got the body cam rolling. The full spectrum camera is still rolling in the hallway. And sure enough, that second part that you saw was the full spectrum camera side. And the entity comes out, the music box goes off again, exactly as we instructed on command. You can audibly hear the footsteps moving down the hall. The GS2 goes off, the music box goes off. So you had, in that case, two investigators that felt the change in the environment. We heard the footsteps as they approached audibly in our first interaction. We asked the entity to interact with the paranormal music box. We leave, go down the hall, and wait to hear if it goes off. And on demand, it goes off again. Again, in my 15 years and having investigated all over the country, hundreds and hundreds of investigations, that is one of the most compelling moments in my paranormal career. Kevin, I know you likewise have been all over the country. Would you say that's one of the most compelling captures that you've been a part of?
Oh yeah, that's great. Especially using a new piece of equipment too, and getting to see that it works, and it's picking up what you're feeling and seeing, and it's really going on in the environment. So yeah, it was great.
So Kevin, I got to ask, when you were standing there and we heard the footsteps approaching, did you feel it coming up behind you? Did you get that like you normally do, where you kind of get that tingly sensation?
Well, I was from what I remember, I just while we were standing down there, I was kind of feeling that whole, it was really, it was one of the only, I guess, times that I really felt, like something was near, or you get that tingling and just that electrostatic feeling. That was in that hallway during that period, and I remember thinking that something was near us.
Yeah, I think you on the main clip, you actually said you felt something come up behind you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it was definitely a cool interaction. For me, that was one of the coolest interactions I had throughout the night. There was a couple of other periods where we really felt like stuff was occurring. We still haven't gotten through all that evidence. I know you guys have reviewed the SJ camera and where we had the Parapup set up, and there is a section where the Parapup activates and nobody is in the room or been in the room. And that's really compelling because the 4 or 5 hours of video, that's the only 2 or 3 times it activates in that one clip.
Yeah, it was maybe a minute in between each time. And it never went off any other time during those clips at all. So that was pretty compelling to me. It did interact when we set it up. We set it up and it didn't do anything. And then a few minutes later, we started asking some questions, and it did go off a couple of times. We have that on video as well. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it was going off randomly at all, because it would have went off the whole 4 hours. So,
and I know, Al, for you, I think probably, and I didn't get to investigate with you the whole night. I was with Kevin quite a bit this investigation because Rhonda wasn't with us, and I'm usually partnered up with Rhonda. So Kevin and I ended up partnering up this time, which was really great. I hadn't got the chance to investigate with Kevin in a long time. So like that, and that was really cool. And I know you went with us a couple of times too, Al. But I think for me, watching you, when you were in the hangman's closet, sitting directly under his noose, Talk a little bit about that experience, because you did Estes and rods, and talk about what you experienced.
Well, anytime I use the rods, if I feel like I'm getting energy, my feet start burning a little bit. And I thought that was crazy. That we had a gentleman one night at one of our publics using the rods, and he actually had to go outside and take his shoes off because his feet were burning. And I thought, well, this guy's a little crazy. But since then, I can feel my feet really starting to burn, and that was a rough session because it wasn't only my feet; it was all up my legs to my knees. Felt like they were on fire for a few minutes, and I think I said that during the Estes, or the King method that I was using, but yeah, and that on top of sweating, I actually felt at one time like I was going to pass out. And
I gotta say though, I mean, when I went and did Estes right after you in that closet, being in that closet, and I'm not claustrophobic at all, but I felt claustrophobic in that closet, and I think to me, that was the one room, like I said earlier, that was the one room where I felt like we really weren't welcome. Like
Right.
Not in a negative sense, not like in an attacking bad sense, but hey, this is my space. You need to get out kind of sense.
Yeah.
I felt in there. And I think in that closet, especially, that was the case.
Well, when me and Christina were doing a rod session back there, we had asked if we could go in that room, and it was adamantly no.
Oh,
Several.
wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, we were not welcome in that room.
Yeah, and I know, and I can see that, because I mean that's definitely how I felt in that closet when I did Estes. I felt very uncomfortable. And again, I think both your rod session, Al, and your Estes and my Estes might have also been lives on our Facebook as well. I think they were. So again, you can go back over to our Facebook and see some of these things live. Plus, we'll have the actual edited video out as soon as we get through all the evidence review. But I was going to say, the other thing that happened to me in that room was later on in the evening, or may have been right before that rod session. I can't remember on the time scale where it happened, but I was touched. Now, it wasn't a violent touch. It wasn't like the claims of the place, but it literally felt like I was goosed on the small of my back. It was odd. And I remember turning to Kevin, and I said, Kevin, look at my back and see if there's a mark there. And I don't know, Kevin, I think there was a small red mark possibly on my back, but that was the only time that I was touched, and it was again in that room, which is that right off that hallway. So to me, that was definitely the hot spot of the place where the activity was occurring the heaviest.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was maybe before we went into the Estes, and in that room, I think I maybe had done it in the room that you got touched in. And you definitely had a red mark. It's, about the size of what a thumbprint would make. And it was just a round circle. And then I remember we looked not that much longer. I don't remember now, but probably 30 minutes later and the mark was gone. So it was interesting for sure. I mean, it was a definite red circle.
Yeah, and I remember we checked. We did a really good job. You and Christina did a really good job of checking to see, if there was any chance that I backed into anything or brushed anything, or if there was anything even on my shirt that could have left that imprint, but there wasn't. But again, I don't want anybody to think that that was a negative touch. I mean, we've been touched multiple times. If you do this long enough, you will be touched by unseen forces. I know myself and Kevin have been touched on several investigations. I think, Al, I don't know if you haven't been touched yet, Al.
The only thing that I really would chalk up to that is at Hinsdale when I felt like something was tugging on my necklace.
Forgot about that.
And I was wearing the protection that night that Ronna had given us. So yeah, and I think you guys had said the same thing, that you felt like
that tugging sensation.
Because it didn't.
Yeah. And it's something that doesn't happen in every location, and that's something I want people to understand too. It's not every single location. In fact, I can count on one hand the number of times I've been touched in again, hundreds of cases that I've been on. I think, Kevin, you'd probably be in the same boat. I don't think it's something that happens, all the time. It depends on the activity, because it takes a lot of force for an entity to be able to do that. But so Michelle, so you guys did, I know you and Christina were together like you guys usually are, and you did, I think, several dowsing rod sessions. So what was the most compelling thing for you that night?
We had several things. We did a dowsing rod session in the front room, which was supposed to be the suicide room. And we communicated with a lady, an older lady, between 40 and 50, that supposedly died of natural causes, is what we could surmise. And she also, there was also a female child spirit there that she kind of mothered. And then we had a really good dowsing session back in the drunkard's room near the hangman's room. And we actually communicated with two spirits. We had two dowsing rods going. April had a set and Christina had a set. And I believe we were communicating with the hangman and the drunkard.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, we had, when we asked permission to go in the hangman's room, he adamantly said no, and the drunkard said yes. So I think they kind of antagonized each other, kind of rubbed each other up. But I think the hanged man really just wanted to be left alone.
And that's kind of, like I said, that's the feeling that I kind of got going back there was, hey, this is my space. Like, just,
Right.
I don't really want you here. So I think that's really awesome that you guys had such compelling things. And what was really, I think, good about that is the experiences that Kevin and Al and myself were having was independent of that, because we did not talk to you and Christina in between those sessions. So we had no idea what you guys got on dowsing rods, and that wasn't deliberate. A lot of times we will talk and say, hey, is this area busy? Is that area busy? Maybe ask these kind of questions, or if our psychics lead us, down different roads, we'll sometimes go down, those avenues. But we didn't do that. There was just so much activity happening. I don't think we ever even met up at headquarters to really discuss any of those sessions until after the fact. So it's kind of cool that I think we had some same validating experiences without even knowing what you guys had experienced in your sessions.
And I think we did ask some of the same questions and kind of realized that later that we got the same answers to some of the questions. So that was really interesting because we hadn't talked to each other about it, and it was kind of a validation.
Yeah.
Most of the conversations were around the God, it's so hot.
Was that not brutal? I mean, was that not horrible? It was.
I vote if we go back, we go in the late fall or winter.
Winter.
I agree. So, overall opinion, would you guys say haunted?
Yes.
You know how skeptical I am, but I would say yes, it is haunted.
Definitely haunted. I would tend to absolutely agree. We had some great interactions and some great activity, and I'm sure there's probably more when we finish going through the evidence. But I think it's got a unique history. It has a certain vibe and a certain feel. I do want to make a comment too that even though it is a haunted house, they don't have any electrical props on, and it's very limited. I mean, it wasn't like the whole place was decked out to where you felt like you were walking through, some kind of horror set. But there were a few things here and there that they had some fake walls up and things like that we had to work around. But it's definitely a location. It's I would definitely go back to. What'd you say, Al? I'm sorry.
A coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coffin.
To the left when you walk up the steps.
Well, one of the interesting things is when you first come up the steps and you go to the right, where the burn man was, there is a steel fire door there. An old steel fire door, and it's really interesting because it's huge, and supposedly that door closed, and that's why the man was trapped. There was no other way out, and that steel door is still there.
And that makes sense because the way those things are designed is they have a fusible link, and when they heat up, and this is from our day job, Al and I's day job as firemen, when that fusible link heats up, it separates and the door slams shut. And that's how it's designed. It's designed to stop fire from spreading between those areas. And they're extremely difficult to open. It would probably take 2 or 3 people to slide a large fire door back and secure it. So if he was on fire, that definitely would be something that was going to be a possibility.
And one of the theory, or I won't say theories, but one of the things that we had heard before we went was that he was standing in the window, not attempting to get out. So I don't know how true that is. I'd like to find out,
maybe he knew he couldn't get out.
Maybe
know.
that's true. Maybe he didn't know. You know,
I know there was some speculation of maybe it was a passive suicide type of thing, and
yeah,
and that's what you got to wonder. You know, is that real? Is that folklore? That's what you got to try and decide and figure through. But there was a lot of suicides there, and a lot of times people will think that might mean there's a dark force or dark entity, dictating those behaviors. While that is a possibility, the more likely answer, at least for me, in the history that we do know, given that the place basically became like a boarding house or a flop house or whatever terminology you want to use, it was a place where people were in a low point in their life. It wasn't a happy place. I mean, these people were abusing drugs and alcohol, a lot of them, and in crime and prostitution, and things were really rampant at that place in the 70s and 80s when a lot of those suicides happened. And I guess what I'm saying is, if you're in a depressive atmosphere like that, sometimes that energy that's deposited, that mark that's left behind, is simply that. It's not something negative that drives it always. It sometimes is just that. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great investigation. And I know Kevin, you can always tell when Kevin's like a kid in a candy store, when stuff's happening, he like lights up. I mean, it's like the kid on Christmas morning. So yeah. I think you had a good time, Kevin. I saw you were pretty excited a few times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a place I would like to go back. And it wasn't one that felt extremely oppressive or something that I, fearful of being in there. I mean, definitely spooky, definitely interesting in the things that were going on. But, we've been some places that I wouldn't necessarily say, well, that's where I want to go back. But, it almost seemed to be like one of our familiar haunts, like, I don't know, like going to the Nickerson Sneed or to Tipton Haynes for some reason. I don't know. Some parts of it felt very comfortable. Not sure why that was.
Absolutely. And I think if it hadn't been 3,000 degrees, it would have been probably even more enjoyable. But no, I got that same impression too. I kind of felt like I never felt on other than that one area, that one room was the only place I felt unwelcome. The rest of the place felt to me very calm, and I think that they're definitely wanting to speak. Whatever's there definitely wants to communicate, and it makes that known.
Some of them do. I think some of them, maybe like she said,
want to be left alone.
Want to be left alone. Yeah.
So
and they
Jared,
probably did in real life too. They probably were loners, didn't want to be bothered by anybody,
So I was going to bring this on screen here. So Jared is actually Michelle's brother, and he goes with us when he can on some investigations. We did have him with us, and we also had two local folks that were going to try and come on the show with us tonight, but they weren't able to. April and James Hensler. They're friends of ours. We actually met them when we went up there for the TB Rippey investigation the year before. We went into a restaurant, had our shirts on. She noticed our shirts and started talking to us about paranormal, said her and her husband were really into it. So we invited them up to the Rippey and became friends with them since then. So they came out with us again since we were in town and went to the Anderson with us. But this right here was also on one of the lives. And what you guys want to talk about that experience? Because I think Kevin and I were actually engaged in the spirit box session when this happened.
Right. Well, during our walkthrough, and I know it's on camera. I felt like I smelled smoke, and somebody said, "Well, it may be from the restaurant." No, it wasn't that kind of smoke. It was like a burning type wood smoke,
And we smelled it throughout the night. So it wasn't just one time. It was several times throughout the night.
And Jared actually sent some pictures of where he captured like a smoke, mist, and it wasn't dust, and it wasn't, it looked like smoke. So, we'll have to let Christina take a look at them and see what she thinks. But, it looked like some wispy smoke in that area.
Well, we definitely could smell it though, because I when we were doing that live and you guys were talking about smelling it, Kevin and I don't think you could smell it, could you, Kevin, when we were back in the room? I personally didn't when you and I were back in the Burning Man's room. But when I stepped out in the hallway, I did get that strong odor of to me what smelled like fire smoke. I mean, again, being a fireman, wood smoke and structure fire smoke smells very different. To me, it had that sort of like house fire smell to it.
Yeah.
What did you think, Al? Did it resemble that more being into the fireplace?
I commented on it during the live, and I don't think anybody else really smelled it at that time. But I kept going. I smell smoke, like something burning, and it was right there on that right side, right past the fire door, and would have made perfect sense of where the fire was located, back in that time. So.
Yeah, and given the fact that the fire took place in I guess it was mid to late 70s, there's no way with all the repairs and renovations and changes and things that have been done that there would be anything left that would still be off-gassing any type of odor. So that was definitely unexplainable. I mean, I don't know that was.
And the restaurant was closed, so there was nobody in the restaurant, so we know it wasn't coming from there.
Yeah.
And Jared just said he was strong. He thought something was on fire. Yep, strong wood smoke. So, I mean, that was definitely an unexplainable thing. And that's something, too, is phantom smells is not something that I've encountered a lot in my paranormal career. It was kind of cool that it happened, and it goes along with that story of the history of that place.
Yeah.
Well, through our dowsing rod session, we never did connect with the burn man, but we did ask questions if there was a man there that died in the fire, and we did get a yes several times for that question, but we never communicated with him actually.
And that's something too that goes along with what you're saying, Michelle. Is if you guys remember when we were talking with the caretakers, they're the owners. They were telling us about a gentleman that actually did live there for a brief period of time. And the reason that this is an eyewitness account, the reason that he left and decided not to live there anymore was he couldn't take the footsteps. He couldn't take the paranormal activity that was happening. And what finished him was waking up in the middle of the night to a burnt corpse looking thing standing over his bed. That was it. He packed up that night and left. So there are those claims of eyewitness accounts from credible sources that do back up the fact that somebody did. We're trying to find the newspaper articles. I started on that process today. I actually reached out to the local newspaper and tried to see if there's any archival stuff that we can pull and maybe read about some of those tragedies and see if we can pin down exactly the date of the fire and add that into the report and the episode.
Yeah. And two, I've reached out to the Anderson County Library, and she did send us a cool pic of what it looked like before they renovated it.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. Did I not email that to you guys?
You might have, and I might have just missed it out.
Okay. Well, I can email that, but it looked very different because you remember there was a glass front in between Evans to Betsy, like looked like a section of glass, but that's where they built the facade out, and up and above and below. So
I guess
that main part of the hotel kind of set back.
So I guess that's kind of like why when you go upstairs, it's got that weird kind of cut up part in the front. Yeah. That's why. Okay, that makes sense now. So that was a structural change after the fire.
So those first 3 or 4 rooms where we had our headquarters and back that way on that front side were later additions from the original building.
I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, I mean, what other experience did you guys, anything else that sticks out or anything else that was kind of memorable that sticks out to you guys?
I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the body cam footage I had, but I did do an isolation experiment back in the hangman's room and the drunkard's room, and captured a figure 3 separate times on the table where the liquor bottles were and the beer bottles that they had put there, just for like 3 seconds, and then it's gone. And there was really nothing on that table that could have created a false positive, like
on the SLS.
Like vacuum cleaners or chairs or things like that will sometimes show a stick figure on the SLS, but none of that. There was nothing like that in there. So I'd moved into the hangman's room, and I guess I was looking away from the camera. I think I was messing with my body cam or something, but there was a figure popped up in the closet for about 3 seconds and then disappeared. And I didn't comment it on. I didn't see it, or I would have commented. So,
Well, that's why now we're going to have the monopod and the GoPro on the screen so that we don't miss those things. So we do learn as we go, even after all these years.
Actually go in there and get it and show everybody, because it's really going to be. I need to show it to Kevin, because you know how heavy that thing gets when you're carrying it around. Well, we fixed that. So
it's its own one-legged thing now.
Yeah.
And I want to point out too about the SLS cam. I know that's one of those pieces of equipment that some people say is false positives, but again, doing your due diligence as a researcher, you learn, excuse me, the limits of your equipment. You learn what false positives are and what something is real, and you can easily distinguish a false positive. If every time I scan this room, I get a false positive, then I know that's going to be there, and I can throw that out. So I got a little catch. I'm sorry. You guys keep talking. I'm going to cough for a minute.
But I'll grab it here in just a second and show you. It's pretty cool. We bought a mount for Matt's GoPro, so we don't have to use our phone or a video recorder to record it. The GoPro's mounted right in front of the screen, so it's awesome. It's pretty awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, that thing's definitely a little awkward to
kind of nose heavy, isn't it? Yeah.
I also took that one screw out that kept the Xbox thing from turning. So now it'll rotate. You don't have to point it down,
Oh, yeah.
Because it is kind of weird the way it's designed. Kevin, you use that piece of equipment a lot. What's your take on the SLS cam? Since we're on that and we've covered a lot of the big stuff from Anderson, what's your take on the SLS cam as a seasoned vet? Since
you purchased the SLS cam?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely given us some good evidence over the times that we've investigated with it. I mean it for certain can pick up anomalies that make sense. That, like Al said, some sort of stick figure in the room that's gonna, every time you pan around, it's gonna catch that, whether that be a something, piece of furniture or whatever. But when you do get something, I mean, there are some times that we've caught and been able to interact with it, or got some figures that were not anywhere in here, that something could be manifesting and otherwise, like there's nothing there but a blank wall. And usually you're not going to get any sort of it's not going to pick up something against a wall that's not there. It really looking, it's going to hit something that's a rigid structure and maybe try to make something out of it. So I think you just got to be careful with it, like any other piece of equipment. It's going to have good with the bad, and everything can't be a ghost. But when you do find those ones that for sure are valuable, it's a good tool, I think.
And I agree, and I think that gets into those secondary and tertiary things that we look for. I mean, if you're feeling things as an investigator and you're getting intelligent responses on a device, or you're getting intelligent movement on command with that stick figure anomaly, that's a lot different than just something mapping in. And I think one of the best examples of that for us would be at the TB Rippey last year, which is literally 1 mile down the road from this location. And we were at that investigation when we had that interaction in the stairwell where it literally reaches out on command and touches Al's hand as Al comments how freezing cold it is and his meter's going on. And then we tried for a good solid hour after that, every way in the world we could, to try and get a false positive to map back in. And we simply, throughout the entire night, never got that to happen again in that area. So I am 100% convinced that was a well-documented interaction with that piece of equipment. And I just think that brings up the point in, any piece of equipment you got to do your due diligence with and make sure that it's a legitimate capture. The same could be said with EVP. You do an EVP session, just because you capture a voice doesn't always mean it's a spirit voice. It could be a distant voice that you didn't rule out properly, or it could be something else that's bled over into the environment that you've got to rule out. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the SOS cam, because I know that's one of those pieces of equipment like spirit boxes that I think are misunderstood and sometimes underutilized in the paranormal community. So Al, what else you got? What else you want to talk about the Anderson?
Well, like I said at the beginning, it took us 2 years of begging to get in there, and once we did, I was glad we did it. I think it's quickly surpassed a lot of the other places as one of my favorites. There's several that I have that are favorites. Of course, Brushy's awesome. Hinsdale's still top of my list, but I mean, this one ranks right up there with the evidence that we caught, and I definitely want to go back, especially if we learn more about the history of the place. We'll have a better idea of what actually happened there.
And that's the thing. Unfortunately, so far, I mean, I'm hoping some of these leads that, I know April's working on it for us, and some of the leads that you and I have got out, I'm hoping that we get some really good information back on the history. But I think where this wasn't, it was originally, I know this much, it was originally built to be a luxury hotel, and apparently that didn't happen. And somehow it took a dark turn and became what it became. But because of that, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but because of the type of history that it had and the type of clientele, that the nefarious activity that was plaguing that place, there isn't a lot of historical documents. There isn't a lot of things left behind like you would find, say, if you went to a famous hotel that was, visited by important people, that was regularly used as a hotel, is still operating as a hotel, that wasn't abandoned for the last 20 years. There would probably be a lot more historical data to use, but unfortunately there's just not a lot with this place, and it's hard to verify a lot of the stories.
Yeah.
Michelle, anything else you want to add about the Anderson?
Yeah, me and Jared had an interesting experience, and I guess it was in the news section to the left there. We were in one of the bedrooms, or a bedroom that was set up, I think, for the haunted house. And we were just doing an EVP session, and we did record it. And, it was really, really quiet. And then we said something about, could you make a noise if there's anyone here? And all of a sudden, it sounded like somebody ran through the doorway where there was plastic hanging from the haunted house. And, I mean, it was loud, and both of us were kind of like, oh, my goodness. And then there was nothing after that. We sat in there for another 10, 15 minutes, nothing. So that was really interesting, and that should be on camera somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Kevin, what about you? What other experience stands out for you during the night?
Well, I think always one thing that's going to make me happy is the interaction on ITC, and we got a lot that night, a lot more than we get in a lot in pretty famous places, and many reasons for that, possibly just for spirits not necessarily being willing or even understanding how to interact with those types of devices. So for whatever reason, that site, we picked up a lot, and that was good. I'm always happy to, and I think it's instantly gratifying, and that's why it's so, I think, fascinating for people to hear, because especially when we're doing publics, that's one of the best things, because people get a real life. Oh my gosh, I just heard that. Playing back EVPs are good too for that, but it's always nice to have something tangible, and I think that place definitely had a lot of activity. We were getting a lot of relevant answers in most of the rooms. I know we sat in that front room where the actual suicide took place, and we possibly were interacting with the person that either, I think there's some either folklore tied to that too, where it might be a suicide, it might be a murder. It's nobody really knows 100%. It's either way, it's some bad things that happened in that room, and I think there were some some other investigations have thought that the room was somewhere different, but from the owner's point of view and history is from the front room on the left side as you go up the stairs is where the younger lady took her life. So, but really everywhere was active. Everywhere we went and tried to interact, it seemed like there was something that happened. So that's always keeps you going. And I know we got hot and tired, and when you're there 5 or 6 hours in the scorching heat, it takes it out of you. And so if it's quiet, it's a little harder to sit through it sometimes. But
Yeah,
it was really good.
Well, and for those of you that don't know, Kevin is our in-house ITC expert. We all kind of have the areas that we love the most, and that is Kevin's wheelhouse. He loves the ITC side of things. I think it challenges his scientific brain, and he wants to try and figure out how this ITC whole interaction takes place.
I would be curious to talk to Daryl Marston and see which room he had his experience in.
Yeah, because he did mention when he was on with us that experience that he had at the Anderson. That's actually when the picture fell off his wall, which he later debunked, but was pretty cool when it happened on the live show.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But we were talking about the Anderson. But those of you that are watching tonight or do watch this later, this, like I said, the lives are available over on our Facebook at SRS Paranormal Fans. There's a few clips up. There's a few lives from that night up if you're interested in seeing that. And we will have the full episode ready here in the next couple of weeks, and it will be going up on our YouTube. Our YouTube channel is SRS Paranormal. And, you'll be able to see all of this, the entire history that we know and everything that we experienced. We'll put all that together and get that up soon. But we got some great stuff coming up. Next weekend, we're on the road again. We're going to where, Al?
We're going to Hales Bar Dam in Gill, Tennessee. That'll be our second trip. And then we're going to do Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, which has been a bucket list item for years. So we're really excited about that. And then next month, do you want to tell them where we're going next month, Matt? Or you?
Sure. Now, let Michelle do it.
Yeah.
In September, we're going to Randolph County Infirmary and Stone Mansion
Winchester.
in Winchester, Indiana.
So, yep, we're excited to get back out and be able to do some of these as much as we can. It's been hard being cooped up. Next week on our show, I will go ahead and talk about this real quick. Next week, we will have medium Sky Ray. She will be on with us, and she will also be with our lead psychic medium, Dr. Rhonda. And they are going to do some live readings. So the second half of the show next week, we will do live readings. The first half, we will be interviewing Sky Ray, and she will be talking about her experiences, her gifts, how she came to her gifts, and how she now uses those gifts to uniquely help people. She even runs a spiritual academy where she helps people develop their gifts. She's a fascinating lady, and we're excited to have her on next week. And like I said, she'll be with Rhonda. She'll also be on our lead psychic, and they're going to do some live readings. What we'll probably do is select 5 or so people at the beginning of the show, and we'll limit the number of readings because we get too many, it gets really complicated. So next week, we'll definitely be doing some live reading stuff on the psychic side. Last thing I was going to plug real quick, some more shameless promotion. We do have a big event coming up called the Hexpo in Asheville. That will be next April. We moved it from this August to April due to all the COVID concerns. But here's a little flyer for that. So those are some of the people that are coming. We'll have Chip Coffey, Amy Bruni, Bishop Long, Joe Chin, and some other guests to be named, still to be named that have not been released yet. So if you are in the Asheville area, or you can catch a plane, train, boat, whatever, and get to the Asheville area, come see us at the Hexpo for none others. What'd say, Al? Hitchhike, whatever it takes. Just you got to get there and see it. But guys, it was good talking to you all tonight about the Anderson. I think it was a great investigation. I know I really enjoyed it. I hope we get to go back, and I can't wait to share with everybody all the experiences we had there. We've got a few minutes remaining. Anything you guys want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, we got to ask Kevin our questions.
Huh. Yeah, and you know what? This is like Kevin's first interview. Go
It
for it, Al. Put him on the spot. I love it.
Ask him our questions.
Go for it, Al.
So, dream location to investigate, Kevin. You've been to a lot of mine by yourself. So, if you could go anywhere and do an investigation, where would you want to go?
There's probably two that stand out right away. I've been to one, which is I would really like an overnight private investigation at the Old Washoe. That would be a great one. The one that ties up there with that would probably be Myrtle's.
Absolutely.
Really would like to see both of them. I've never been to Myrtle's, so that's definitely one. But
why don't we plan a road trip to Myrtle's?
That's what's the one we did on the way down in Mississippi?
Vicksburg?
Vicksburg, the
Raven Manor?
Yeah.
And then couple of creepy cemeteries to go look at. Maybe not investigate, but check out. So
all right, Al, hit him with that last question.
All right, God forbid, Kevin, something happened to you tomorrow. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of dark, Al.
So it did, and you come back as a ghost. What would your ghost outfit be?
My ghost outfit. I always like the ghost that kind of like Jacob Marley, where he's got his stuff. He has to tie his stuff on, and he's got chains. I think I go to old school and have some chains and
like Ghost of Christmas Past kind of.
Yeah, probably.
Al, you gonna tell him what yours is? Kevin wants to know what yours is. He probably knows.
Well, I said if I was a ghost and I was going to come back to scare people, I would just be naked. So
yeah,
pretty frightening, I would imagine.
Yeah,
I'm going Grim Reaper. I'm going like
people leave the house running, scared to death.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, it was good to have you guys on and talk about this tonight. So I enjoyed talking to y'all. But any last words before we sign off and say goodnight to everybody?
No, just if you get a chance, go see the Anderson Hotel. Betsy and Jackson are great people. Great food too. If you go, you got to eat at Heavens to Betsy. We've ate there every time we've been to Lawrenceburg. So go check them out. Like I said, if you get a chance to do the Anderson, it's well worth it.
And if you're a whiskey fan, that's the place to go because that is whiskey country. So you can go to Wild Turkey Distillery. And if you do, you take a tour of the distillery building that actually is connected to the T.B. Rippey property. It was the Tyrone Distillery back when he started that whiskey label. So a lot of cool history. If you like history, Lawrenceburg is a cool little town.
And drive by if you go 2 blocks up from the Anderson, you'll run right into the Rippey. So at least get out and take some pictures from the sidewalk. So.
Which unfortunately they don't do paranormal investigations at the Rippey anymore, but that was one of my favorite locations, just if nothing else, because of its amazing architecture. But everybody, thank you for joining us tonight here on The Gathering. We'll be back next week with Medium Sky Ray, and please check out our social media links and follow what we get into. Until next time.